This is Theater Talk. I'm Susan Haskins. Here with me is my co-host, Michael Riedel of the New York Daily News.
The critics say Rip Torn is one of the finest actors in America. You can see him currently in Horton Foote's The Young Man from Atlanta, a big hit on Broadway, and we are delighted tonight to be joined by Rip Torn. Rip, thanks for coming out.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Susan.
Let's talk about The Young Man from Atlanta first. If you can tell us a little bit about what the play is about, and also your character in the play and what you are trying to accomplish each night at that theater. How's that for you?
Well, it's a Pulitzer Prize winning play, so that puts you on notice right away.
Mm-hmm.
It's about a family in crisis, a man who at the height of his power and supposedly in a very prominent position in a company, a produce company, which is agricultural and farm products and foodstuffs, and probably they have poultry too, I don't know. But he loses his job, and earlier, 6 months before that, he's lost his son in a drowning accident. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot of fun, but it actually is, and the way the family faces this, there is a lot of tremendous humor in this play, and that's what the audience is surprised to find, and it has both comedy and tragedy. So some people have said this is like is this a tragic comedy or a comic tragedy? And Strindberg, who is considered the first modern playwright, mm-hmm. he always said he wanted comic actors to play his pieces because even though he had some grim things to say in his plays, he didn't want it to be said grimly.
Right.
And I think that's marks the success of this production, is that it is very human and is not melodramatic, and people, I once discussed comedy with Harold Pinter, and he, also being a great playwright and a wonderful actor, what makes people laugh? And I said, well, Bernard Shaw said, I tell the truth and people laugh. And I think that's why people laugh throughout the play of Young Man from Atlanta up to the very last scene. There are really
right.
belly laughs in the play, and I think it's what makes it possible for them to enjoy what is a very moving experience.
Yeah, I would imagine the tragedy and the grimness is more effective at the end after you've had a good time throughout, and it kind
right.
of sneaks up on you without knowing what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Now, you are of course well known for the Larry Sanders Show, playing Artie the producer,
right.
which is a real great comic turn for you.
Yes.
Do you consider yourself a comic actor at all? Is that what you enjoy doing the most?
Well, the comic actor Jack Weston was always a good friend of mine, and he told people, said, don't let these villainous parts fool you. Rip's a clown. And I think I always have been. My sister Patricia is coming up to see me in the play this weekend, and it's true that when I was a kid and wrote my own plays and put on neighborhood satires, that she did say to me, you know, you seem to be wanting to be another Danny Kaye. She said, you should be like Tyrone Power. So the girls like that better than. So I don't know. I think seeing Gary Shandling, I think comics do very well with the opposite sex. I mean, it doesn't. A good laugh is
You've done pretty
the
well
way to the
over
heart,
the
you know.
No, and that's that. Not that we're here to talk about TV, but that Artie is a sexy character because he's.
Yeah. Yeah, Gary doesn't see it that way, and Larry, it's Larry Sanders. We had, which was one of our most fun bit of ad lib or improvisation. I was talking about Winona Judd, and he just started ad libbing with me in front of the camera, and he said, "Oh, he said, don't. I just said, oh, she's so hot. I just love her so much. And even if she's got married, I don't care, you know. And or even if she didn't get married, whatever her status is, she's gained a little weight, but she's great. And he said, don't stop right there. I don't, just even the idea of you in any kind of romantic interlude is just so horrific. It just boggles the mind. I don't want to deal with it. And I said, well, would you believe, this all made up. Mm-hmm. I said, would you believe Marilyn? He says, no, more like Ava Gabor. And I got up, and as I walked out, I said, Zsa. So it's just wordplay. Just wordplay.
That's right. And you're a comic too. I mean,
yeah.
And you're great in villain roles. There was something you did. It was a Columbo television show.
I got a lot of laughs.
And you played the murderer. And you seem to have such a gleeful joy in playing the bad guys. Are they really more fun than playing the hero or the kind of male?
My daughter Katie, who's now 14. I have 6 kids, as you know, and you know my daughter Angelica. But Katie told me about 5 years ago, said, Dad, please don't play any more bad guys. And my son Tony, when I was playing a lot of guest villains, I said, when he was a kid, I says, come here, sit with your old man and watch this show. He says, play the bad guy? I said, yeah. He said, you mop up on somebody? I says, yeah. You get killed at the end? I said, yeah. He said, same old thing. So I have a lot more fun with, I say that, what's the difference between comedy and villainy? I said in restaurants, I said, comedy will get you a better table.
You played one of the best Nixons that ever, and speaking of playing bad guys, but giving them, that you didn't play him as a bad guy. You
tried to make him very even-handed. That's what John Dean said. And so when I would go to the neighborhood supermarket, some people would say, you really gave it to him. And other people would come and pat me on the back and said, great job, Mr. President. I'd vote for you anytime. So
Shakespearean character, Nixon, though, really. I mean, you know, the tragedy.
I had played him as played Richard III, and I played it as Nixon was mine. Mm-hmm. So I didn't work for a few years after that, but
the wrong timing for Richard III.
I don't skewer any political figures anymore.
No.
And I hope that I treated President Nixon a little better than he treated me.
Just going back to Young Man from Atlanta, because you're not playing the villain in this play.
No.
Your reviews were really extraordinary. I mean, the New York Times had a gigantic picture of you, and the lead was about your performance. I'm curious to know, do you read those reviews, and is it ever dangerous, though, to begin to believe your own press clippings when they're so good?
Well, the old adage is if you believe the good ones, you'll believe the bad ones. But
and have you had bad ones over the years?
Oh, I've had so many bad ones. I used to cry.
Really?
Oh yeah. I mean, some of them. I could quote you some of them. I'm in Dinah Rigg's book of bad reviews, mm-hmm. And I've been called in my time the worst performance by any male leading actor, and that it took a director to concoct so elaborately rotten a performance. I mean,
what was this for?
Oh, I can't say.
Oh, come on. It's ancient,
I'd have to launch into the whole thing.
It's ancient history.
No, I don't remember who it was.
It wasn't your Hamlet, right?
I don't want to remind them, you know. This particular gentleman gave me a good review, so I don't want to remind him.
But really, were you that thin-skinned, though, you know, starting out in your career when you got a bad review? Is it that difficult to pick
I used to
yourself?
always threaten I would go back in the Army. But then there got to be a time when even the Army wouldn't take me. So.
But you're beyond that now, and the reviews are very, very good for the Young Man from Atlanta.
It's awesome. I don't know, fishermen will understand what I'm saying. I don't really, I just really can't relate to it as myself. I mean, it's so spectacular. I said I was when I was and great for the play. And I think that has a lot to do with it. that it was Horton Foote's time. And gee, even talking about this, I got to get out of this kind of tone of voice, and you know, I'm getting to. Let me say what I feel about it as a fisherman. I was fishing, I'm a fly fisherman. I was up in Canada fishing for steelhead, and I never caught one at that time. And I knew that at the what they call the lie, there were a number of fish in this one spot, and I just obsessively kept drifting the fly there. And all of a sudden, downriver, I saw this giant fish come out of the water like that and hang there and come down with a mighty. And the guy hit me and says, "Hey, bub, that's you." Well, I meant that was my fish. Yeah. And I ran down the river and I caught that fish. And but there, at the moment, I couldn't believe that there was any connection between me and seeing that. So I mean.
You don't think there's a connection between you and the Rip Torn you read about in those brave reviews?
I try not, because my head would get so much larger than it is. It would balloon out here. Yeah, I could see people coming on and believing that. You know, you gotta do another show. And since our director Bob Falls is back at Goodman doing something else, and he always said I was a good team leader, I told everybody the second night, I said, legendarily, after a great opening, the second night goes down the tubes. I said, we must go and we must have even a better show. And I think that as we've, all my friends that have seen the show say that it's getting progressively better all the time. And we felt that Shirley, myself, Shirley Knight, Bibb McGuire, that the play will get better and better as we work on it.
Let's talk a little bit about your background. You grew up in Texas.
Yes.
Any connection at all to show business or the theater in your family?
I found out after I took my mother to, when I was nominated for an Academy Award in Best Supporting, and I knew that I was the dark horse, and they wanted to see the agony of the loser, because they let Nicholson was actually a star, but they let him go for the Best Supporting. So I just figured I'd give him a bit of a sweat and get some play out of it for Cross Creek. But I brought my mom and my kids, and their mother, Geraldine, she was on stage at the time.
Geraldine Page?
Yes. And the people at Entertainment Tonight said, I don't have to know how to tell you this, but your mother, Thelma, is stealing this show. And I said, that's what she's there for. It took it away from anybody having to worry about me. She was delightful. She shed tears on cue. She got all her laughs. She was a star. And she told me afterwards, she said, I never told you this because I didn't want to encourage you, but when I was a girl, and she was a very beautiful woman, I was offered a Hollywood contract, and I decided to marry your dad instead.
Wow.
And she said, but I always wondered whether or not I could have done it, and now I know I could have. And that's all I wanted, and you gave me that. And
but why'd you decide to become an actor?
everybody that knows me as a child, they say that I always was. I always was an actor. That if I were late to Sunday school, I had a story about fighting a bear on the courthouse yard, and I could act out all the parts. And I, at a very early age, like I said, I put on plays. But I never got in the high school play because I was told by Mr. Baumgartner, who was later on, he said, you know, we didn't cast you in the high school play or the senior play or the junior play because we knew you had that tendency and we didn't want to encourage it. But at Texas A&M, where I was an Aggie, and down in Texas they tell Aggie jokes instead of Polish jokes.
Now what's an Aggie?
But They go to Texas A&M, and
That's what they call
from agriculture.
Study agriculture,
Kind
right.
of a rube, you know. I went with a friend of mine to a reading for a play by Carol Capek called R.U.R., which is an early thing about androids and robots and artificial human beings. And he didn't get the part, but I did. And I played a much older man with a paste-on mustache. He was very suave. And everybody was talking about this character, and I was working in the mess hall, and I heard some guy say, "You got to get up there, wherever, what hall it was," it says, see this guy that's playing this part in this play. He is really funny. And I said, "That's me." He says, no, you go up there and watch this guy. So I kind of got hooked on as a character actor that way.
And then you were
Then I was
discovered.
the actors. I read for Elia Kazan, and I got the role as a understudy in Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. And I was married at that time to Ann Wedgeworth.
Right, wonderful actress.
And I had taken my mustering out pay from the Army, where I was an officer in the military police, a traffic officer in the 1st Armored Division, and loaded all our belongings on top of an old Chevrolet and drove up like the Jodes and the Grapes of Wrath. And it was Pat Hingle who got me the audition, and I got the job.
And then you went on to Sweet Bird of Youth.
Later I played in Sweet Bird
And were
of Youth.
nominated for a Tony.
Yes.
You had a very long association with Tennessee Williams. And you saw him, you know, at the height of his
Right.
success with Cat on the Hot Tin Roof, but you were also with him during the difficult times toward the end of his career. Was it difficult?
Well, my wife at the time, Ann Wedgeworth, and I used to go down there and visit him because we both liked to swim. And then later on, when I was married to Geraldine Page,
Down the south where he is.
we would go down to Key West and visit him. And he was very devilish. He would like to suggest things about Jerry and some guy she knew in her past, and he would tell her about when I was down there with my first wife, and then we would get into a big brawl with each other. And when he finally turned on and said, "It's you," and he was giggling just in the corner. "You do this to us. We're onto your game. You just like to provoke people, don't you?" And he certainly did in his plays. Mm-hmm. But people said he was concerned with violence. Well, he died violently. And in that sense, it was prophetic. He was a dear human being, and once we both wrote each other letters after. He didn't really love Kennedy until after he was killed, and we argued a lot about Kennedy and who I liked. And then I wrote him a letter which I said that I had always felt toward him as if we were blood kin, and he liked that. And we had come from a similar background. I also had great training in speaking verse and poetry, and I appreciated his poetry as I do Horton Foote, who I consider a great dramatic poet.
When you say he died violently, do you think that he really did choke on that bottle top, or do you think it's always a little mysterious, that death?
Well,
I thought
it was, whether it was an accident or not, it was a violent
he may have been
death. I don't know, but it's an unsolved mystery.
You know, you had a reputation for a long time as being kind of a bad boy. I think the Times referred to you as the bad boy Rip Torn. And you struggled, you know, for many years, but you really are a star now with the television show and the Broadway.
And I'm in crossword puzzles, too.
Yeah, right. I mean, does it feel good to have finally sort of become king of the hill after all these years?
You betcha.
Do you still ever worry about your next job? Or now are you thinking, nah, I got it made?
No, you never. In our business, it's, you know, you're like a farm worker in a sense, you know, where the crop comes in or not, whether you're going to work or whether you get in a. But I have a broad-based career. I can play a lot of different characters. I can play comedy and tragedy. I do a lot of voiceovers. I'm the voice of Zeus in the the new Hercules for Disney, and I did that Energizer Bunny commercial. So
That was a
some
classic.
people think
The
that's
struggles
best-
are all
my
over
best
with her.
word.
The struggles
But
are
I
over.
never thought you had it, but then that
Energizer Bunny.
Energizer Bunny commercial, you showed me something.
All right. Rip Torn, thanks a lot. You've been
Okay.
great, and we wish you the best of luck. You can see Rip Torn in The Young Man from Atlanta, the Horton Foote play now on Broadway.
They respect me over there. We've done business together for over 30 years now. And if I do say so myself...
May I be frank, Will?
Yes, sir?
You're the reason they're giving for leaving us.
Me?
Yes, you. They feel you're no longer with it, as they say.
Who says? Not Cochran Judd. Well, he and I...
No, not Cochran Judd. He's been fired.
My God, when?
As of yesterday. There have been a lot of replacements there, I believe. It's a new age, Will. My father wouldn't recognize business as it's done today. Very competitive.
Well, shoot, that doesn't scare me. I thrive on competition, Ted. When I started with this company, when your father and I were young men, that's what made us the success we became, our competitive spirit. Your dad said to me one day, he said, I always thought I was a competitive man, but you are the most competitive man I've ever known or seen. The most. That's what he said.